Welcome to Belly Dance Alchemy, a captivating blend of the best elements of career and professional development and the magic of belly dance. I'm your host, Kelly Nottingham. Ready to make your day job sparkle and your dance life grow in new and inspiring ways? Well, let's see what we can brew up. Hi, listeners. In this episode, we discuss very mild symptoms of anxiety and depression related to change management. If these symptoms sound familiar to you and you're struggling with them, I strongly encourage you to find a licensed counselor or therapist who can help walk you through ways to handle those emotions in a healthy way. Hugs to everybody. Hi, everybody. I recently had a conversation with my stepdaughter who just finished her senior year of college. She just graduated this spring and is getting ready to move on to the next big phase of her life. And in the course of our conversation, talking about what her plans were for the next big chapter, it made me think about how we manage change and whether we handle it effectively or ineffectively and how we can handle it better. Now, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I love teaching about change management. So today we're going to be talking about the emotional and psychological sides of change that we go through based on the work of Dr. William Bridges in his book, Managing Transitions, Making the Most of Change. Now, if you're interested in digging into this topic further, I highly recommend this book. It talks primarily to leaders, especially, and people in an organization that may be going through a lot of change. But I find the book very helpful for people who may not necessarily be in leadership roles, but are just looking for general ideas on dealing with a lot of change and trying to figure out how to manage it more effectively. Now, we're going through a lot of changes right now in the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. There's just a lot going on. We've got a lot of people who are struggling with a lot of change at the same time. And all of the emotions that go along with that change really impact how effectively we can move forward. So yes, this podcast can be relevant for people that are dealing with those big, humongous changes like job loss or potential job loss. But it can also be useful for those of you who may be feeling an itch to do something a little bit different with your life. Maybe you feel like you're in a rut, but you're not sure how to let go of the old way of doing things and move into a new way. I think this is one of the interesting aspects of this pandemic situation, is that a lot of us have had more time to do some deep thinking with capital letters, right? Deep thinking and navel gazing. And for some, it's caused this desire for a major life overhaul. So how can we manage the changes that take place when we go through these types of phases in our lives? So we're going to jump right in with a couple of definitions to start off with. The way that Dr. Bridges defines change and transition. Change is the situation. It's the difference that happens to us externally, while transitions are the emotional phases we go through when we're going from the old way of doing things to the new way. So let's say we're getting ready to move. We're going to move to a new city. The change is itself the move to the new city. The transitions are all of the psychological and emotional pieces we go through as we adjust from the old way of living into this new way of living in a new city. If you've ever been through any major changes in your life, and I'm sure everybody has at some point been through something major in their lives that caused a lot of change, you will likely have noticed that usually it's the transition stuff that really starts to bog us down. It's that emotional or psychological side that really starts to cause a lot of issue for us. Because a lot of times we deal with the practical sides of a change because it's easier and it's cleaner to deal with than the mushy psychological, emotional stuff that comes along with it. So for example, in our move to our fabulous new home, we have all of the stuff that we have to do to let go of the current life that we have. So we need to get rid of our current apartment. We need to cancel our internet service. We need to cancel our dance class membership. And we have to then figure out what the new is going to look like. So finding a new job and all the steps that go along with that, finding a new place to live and all the steps that go into getting our stuff from point A to point B, and of course, finding a new dance studio. So those are the practical sides of moving. But the transitional sides are all of the pieces that float around that can cause us a lot of stress, anger, frustration, depression, anxiety, sadness, and so on. So we're going to be talking about that side of things today. So we've got point A and point B. We can think about point A is where we are now. Point B is where we're going to go. And a lot of times when we're discussing changes in our lives, we think about where we are and where we want to go as a direct and short line. What we often don't think about is that middle piece in between the two dots, where we're in between doorways, if you will. We're in between one room of our life and the next room of our life. And there's a moment in a doorway where we may have one foot in the old and one foot in the new, but we ourselves, the rest of our bodies and our emotions and our minds are in between. So we're not really in either room. When we look at the way we deal with transitions, that process of getting ourselves through that doorway mentally and emotionally and realigning ourselves with a new way of living, Dr. Bridges breaks this down into 3 phases. The ending, losing, letting go phase, that's the room that we were in and the old patterns and the old identity we had. It's our comfort zone, right? That's ending. The ending, losing, letting go is the phase that we have to grieve through. We have to be willing to let go of the grip that we've had on the old things as we start to step through that doorway. The doorway he calls the neutral zone. That's the in-between phase. When we're realigning everything, he calls this repatterning. We mean breaking apart all of the old patterns, all of our comfort zone pieces of our lives, all of our old identity that we may have in, let's say, that city that we're moving away from. Figuring out how to pull all of that apart and then put it back together into a new shape that we can take with us into that new beginnings phase, which is the 3rd phase of the 3. So the new beginnings phase is our new identity, our new patterns, our new purpose, and what we're doing in the way forward. So those 3 phases, ending, losing, letting go, neutral zone, and new beginnings. Now the door example is my example. That's not Dr. Bridges' example, just to clarify. But to me, that's a way of thinking about the way that we do change. Because we're going out of one room as one person, we're stepping through that threshold and we become a new person on the other side. We may end up having 99% of the same stuff. We may only have 70% of the same stuff, the same parts of ourselves that we're taking through that doorway. But it's within that frame of the door that these changes happen, that we realign everything that we're doing, what in the sociological world we call the liminal phase, where you're neither A nor B. You're this weird amalgam of in between. So what I'd like to do for the rest of this podcast is talk a little bit about each of these 3 phases and spending a lot of time on the emotional sides of the change that really trip us up. What the different phases represent, what they feel like, and what we can do to help ourselves get through each one of them. Because when we're thinking about change, a lot of times we think about the change starting and then ending. But we can instead flip that around and say that a change means that we're ending the current way of doing things and we are working through to begin the new way of doing things. Sometimes that's a little bit of a helpful cheat to think about because the first phase is all about letting go and ending, and that can be very difficult. One of the biggest challenges with this ending, losing, letting go phase is realizing that the comfort zone is going away. My mentor, Shimran Ibrahim, calls it the safety zone, and I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. We're going into a new part of existence that feels less safe to us. A lot of times we don't even realize how big this comfort zone is and how settled into it we are until something changes. So sometimes we can feel really lost in this phase. Some of the emotions that we deal with most commonly in this ending, losing, letting go phase feel a lot like the phases that people go through when they're dealing with grief, when they've lost a person in their lives. Lately, I've been having a lot of conversations with former colleagues who've lost their jobs due to the pandemic and the changes in the economy that have happened. There are other folks who've had to change their work So they've changed the role they're in to continue working for the same company. So they still have gainful employment, but it's essentially a whole different job. Others are now in the role of children's taskmaster for kids who are now going to school at home. For others, it's losing the stability of a social community, those needed human connections. And I think for a lot of dancers, this has hit us very hard in this respect because we live in such an embodied and connected way. When we lose the ability to connect with ourselves and our friends, it can make everything else feel unstable. So let's imagine we have a major change going on at our job and we have 6 coworkers that we're watching. We're watching how they handle the change, and each one of these people represents a different reaction, a different emotion in this ending, losing, letting go phase. Now, if you want, you can also imagine yourself or someone you know in your dance circle in each one of these roles. And you can ask yourself as we go through these, which one do you tend to kind of sit in for a little while emotionally? So our first coworker, we're going to call her Angry Amy. Angry Amy is lashing out at people. She's trying to blame other people for what's going on. She's blaming the economy. She's blaming everybody under the sun for the problems that she's having to deal with right now. And she's started to get really resistant to doing what she needs to do to get work done. So in a sense, she's actually sabotaging what everybody else is trying to get accomplished through the change because she's saying, I refuse to do this. I don't want to do this. This is stupid. I'm not going to do it. And she sits there in the corner being angry. Now, Angry Amy here, she may have this lashing out showing up in 2 ways. The first is that she will very vocally tell everybody and their brother what is wrong, make sure that everybody understands her frustration. In her mind, everybody wants to hear what she has to say. What she's doing is she's looking for other people to be angry with her. She wants to have another group of people to commiserate with. Now, she may also be a mumbler. I know you know exactly who I'm talking about. The person that sits in the meeting with their arms crossed and they look frustrated and angry and they're scowling, and you say something to them in the meeting and you hear Angry Amy going, me, 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 me. And you say, I'm sorry, Amy, did you have something you wanted to add? Nope. And she refuses to share what she's thinking, what she's feeling, what she's processing. Again, she's looking for other people to be frustrated with her. And here's the reason why. If she can get other people to be frustrated, it proves her right. Next up, we have Bargaining Barney. Bargaining Barney looks at the situation that's going on and he says, okay, but if we just tweak the process just a little bit that we were already doing, we won't have to go through all this change. If we don't have to change that much, we can just do this a little differently. Just give us a chance to do the old way again, just a little bit different so we don't have to try to learn this new way of doing things. That's bargaining. It's problem solving in a sense, but it kind of is fake problem solving because it's not actually focused on the new that the group is moving into. The next colleague is Anxiety Andre. Anxiety Andre is having a tremendous amount of fear of the unknown. He's struggling with being concerned about the difficulty of having to change things, and it's causing these feelings of not being able to sit still a lot, feeling heart palpitations, feeling stomach upset, getting headaches a lot. Poor Anxiety Andre is saying things like, this is never going to work. We always try these things and it never works, and we're going to end up broke, and the company's going to fall apart, and the whole team is going to fall apart, and we're going to end up completely financially destroyed. Disaster, disaster, the sky is falling. Our next colleague is Sadness Sarah. She's just feeling weepy. She's reminiscing about what used to be. She's recalling the good times that were in the past and maybe forgetting that there were some bad times in the past too, but focusing so much on everything that's going to be going away that she can't actually even really look up to see that there might be some interesting possibilities in the new way that we're going to go. Sadness Sarah can end up becoming depressed if she doesn't figure out how to move herself forward. Our next is disorientation Danny. Disorientation Danny suffers with confusion. They walk into a room and forget what they were going to say or what they were going to work on, forgets to come to meetings, forgets about assignments that they were supposed to do. And when you ask questions about a topic, they're like, what are you talking about? Disorientation Danny can't sometimes remember what you're discussing with them or what you just talked about with them yesterday. So disorientation Danny feels a little bit like they're losing their mind because they're getting so forgetful and so confused, and their brain is basically just not able to process all that's going on. The last of our 6 colleagues and emotional states is depression Devi. Depression Devi is tired all the time. She's sitting in her office. She just feels very deflated, very flat. The aspect of her face is slack. You don't see the energy level that you normally see because normally Devi is delightful Devi, and right now she just can't seem to get going. She may be calling in sick more often. She may be leaving work early and just does not have any energy or drive to move forward. So that was a quick, kind of silly look at the 6 major emotional reactions that people go through in this ending, losing, letting go phase. So I'm going to run through them again just to remind you. Anger, bargaining, anxiety, sadness, disorientation, and depression. Now, what's fascinating about this is that we can feel all of these emotions in one day. We can feel them run backwards and forwards. It's not like we sit in one and we're sitting in anger the whole time that we're dealing with ending, losing, and letting go, and then we suddenly pop out the other side and everything's great. We may actually sit in anger for a couple of hours, and then we move into anxiety mode, and then we move into disorientation mode, and then we move into sadness mode. So we can move through these different phases of emotions as we're dealing with this process of letting go of our old patterns, our old identities, and our old way of doing things. There's nothing wrong with feeling these different emotions. There is nothing wrong with it. It's normal. The challenge for us is to not let these emotions take a hold of how we're able to move through the change process and this transformation from being at point A, going through our neutral phase, and being in point B. We have to find the balance between allowing ourselves to process those emotions and feel those emotions without letting them sabotage what we need to do. And that's a fine line. It takes a lot of self-awareness to know and frankly to admit that we're feeling angry today. And this is why we're feeling angry, or this is why we're feeling disoriented. And it's okay to feel disoriented, but what can we do to start the process and move through? When you start to deny that you're feeling these emotions or these phases that you might be stuck in, you're not actually fixing them. You're just prolonging them. You know, it's kind of like when you have an old cabbage in your fridge and you see the cabbage and like you really need to throw it out. But instead of actually handling it and taking it and looking at it and realizing that it's bad and then throwing it away, we just push it further back into the fridge. You know what I'm talking about here. And at some point, we're going to have to deal with that cabbage, y'all. So let yourself feel these feelings, but make sure that it's not impacting your professionalism or your friendships. If you need to talk to some of your coworkers or friends who are also going through the same or a similar change, make sure that you're not enabling any of their frustration or their bargaining or their anxiety or disorientation or sadness. Now, what I found personally is that a lot of these feelings that we go through in this ending, losing, letting go phase are related to a lack of feeling control. People who have more control over the change that's happening to them are going to move through these transitional phases faster. For a lot of us who are dealing with the repercussions of other people's decisions, it makes that control feel really small. And that in itself will cause a stronger emotional reaction from us. It's harder to let go and walk through the ending phase when you're being pulled by somebody else than it is when you're able to take that step for yourself. So the lesson we can learn from this is that we need to identify the things that we have some control over, looking very openly at what is going to change, what's going to be the same, and what we can control and what we can't. Now, there may be times when we can't control anything but ourselves and our reactions, but that's still something to work through and control and know that we have control over that. Often we will find that there's actually more that we control than we realize. We also control, believe it or not, our comfort zones. So what is your comfort zone? What is your new comfort zone going to look like when this change is through? How have we identified ourselves in the place where we are now? And what about that is going to potentially change? What about our new identity is going to be the same? A lot of these questions come down to that core of who we are on the inside and how we identify ourselves. So here's an example. Let's say that you are really good with fan veils. You're in a troop that's used fan veils extensively for several years now. Your troop leader has just announced that the troop is changing directions and will now focus on folkloric styles of dance from Egypt. You were always the best fan veil dancer in your troop, the one the other dancers came to ask questions or get help after rehearsal. You were always front and center on stage. But now, you're realizing you have never held a Saidi cane in your life. You may be feeling a tremendous loss of identity because your expert status is now gone. It's gone. It's gone. And you're going to be a newbie just like everybody else now. That can be extremely unsettling, but you do have control over the fact that you learn new movement vocabularies quickly. You learn new props quickly. You enjoy helping other dancers learn, and you understand the rehearsal processes that your troupe does really well. So you're going to be able to transfer those pieces of knowledge and experience that you had in many ways into these new dance styles. So this is a different way of thinking about that loss of identity. It's identifying what pieces you're going to be able to take with you into your new identity. Okay, so that was our first phase, our ending, losing, letting go phase, that grieving phase. We're getting rid of our old patterns in that phase. The next phase is the neutral zone. This is the doorway. So while we're in the doorway, we're neither in our old identity or our new identity yet. We're not in the old groove, but we have yet to find the new groove that we're going to get into. I think a lot of us are feeling this way right in this moment. This is in late September, early October, in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's the difference between our old normal and our new normal. But we're not ready for new normal yet. We're in that middle phase still of trying to figure things out. I'm calling this the new abnormal, because that makes it feel a little bit less like it needs to be permanent. A lot of times when we're in this neutral zone kind of feeling and phase, we just feel like we want to blow through it at 100 miles an hour. This is the way it was. This is the way it is now. I'm just jumping straight in and I'm going to handle it as quickly as possible and not really think about what's happening. We're just going to jump right into the new. But the neutral zone is actually where all of the true transition happens. This is where all of those pieces are broken out and then they're put together into a new configuration, maybe getting rid of some pieces, maybe bringing in some new pieces to create that new future. And that new future is the new beginning phase. But we can't create the new without disassembling the old. When you're in the neutral zone, you will still be processing a lot of the same emotions we've already talked about. It's perfectly normal to go through that entire emotional cycle, and you may find that you get re-angry or re-sad or re-anxious if the changes keep coming, because sometimes they do. That's frankly the pace of the world we live in nowadays. You get rid of one change and immediately another one hits. So we may cycle through these emotions multiple times as we're in this neutral zone, and we may end up back into another ending, losing, letting go if we have another big change happen. Now, in this neutral zone, expect to feel weird. Expect to feel that you're not very productive. Expect to feel like you just can't get a whole lot done. You're trying, but things just aren't happening as fast as you want. That is completely normal for this phase. The other thing that will often come up in this phase is the baggage that you're bringing from other situations that you've dealt with, or maybe other situations you never actually did deal with. And you're bringing all that luggage with you into this new situation, into this neutral zone. And boy, you are going to feel that baggage. This is especially true if you've been through a similar situation in the past and you're getting ready to go through something similar again. You're going to be bringing a lot of that psychological and emotional baggage with you. If a previous change that you went through ended up being a little bit more stressful than you were expecting, or let's say that you got let go from a job and you started a new job right away, and that job also just sucked, and then you had to go through the process of finding yet another job, that storyline that you have in your mind about what happened comes with you. In the neutral zone, you may find that information and that storyline really playing out in your head over and over again. So this is a way for you to find your baggage. You can consciously look for the storylines and the information and these myths about your past as they keep coming up. They're trying to tell you something. So we got to find the baggage. We got to unpack it a little bit so we don't have to take it with you into this new life. So there's some ways to work through this phase. One is to identify what was working and what wasn't in your former existence, in that room that you're walking out of. You can brainstorm about some ways to fix the things that weren't working going forward. So let's say in your last job, you loved the work, but you hated the fact that you didn't have a lot of work-life balance. You can identify what you loved about the work, what you're going to be taking with you from that into your new life, but also looking at how can I fix this work-life balance issue going forward because of something that I hadn't figured it out in my previous work. You can, at this point, also set easy, short-range goals. So focus on what you can control. This is honestly one of the biggest challenges, I think, of this stage, is that people want to set these humongous overarching goals about what my life is going to look like. And I'm not saying that that's wrong to do. It's not wrong to want to set larger goals. But the challenge is that sometimes when we're in the neutral zone, we're already having so much to deal with that we can't necessarily step into a 5-year plan. I mean, sometimes we just need to focus on the 30-day plan or the 60-day plan. Sometimes we just need to work on the 5-day plan or the 1-day plan, because we still may be in that disorientation feeling. We still may be anxious. We still may be angry. And so setting those little micro goals, little short-term goals, can give you something that you can immediately control, which is going to help you feel that you're making forward momentum. And that also gives you something to celebrate, which is important, that we feel like we're making that forward progress and we're acknowledging it, even if the progress in any other situation would feel microscopic. When we're in the neutral zone, those little baby steps can be the way we start to move ourselves forward and build momentum. So embrace the baby steps. Don't try to force the solutions too fast because you're going to be creating a new comfort zone for yourself. This new comfort zone, as we're creating it, we run the risk of not identifying ruts or patterns that we got into before, and that we're carrying those same patterns with us into the new. This ties back into that same idea of what do we want to change about going forward? What can we be creative about as we move forward? Because when we break up our routines and our patterns, we may find a great opportunity to identify things like, wow, I was really in a rut with my physical fitness and training, and maybe I want to try something different. Maybe I want to do something new. Then you set up those little goals, you celebrate your milestones on those new zone expanders. Those little milestones, those little steps can help to solidify the new patterns that you are creating in your life. And it does give you a sense of control and comfort to realize that you're moving forward. sometimes when we do try to jump just straight into the new me, we don't realize how quickly we basically are recreating the same patterns and grooves and comfort zone that we've always been in. And as we're looking at our new life, we're looking at those patterns that we've started to create in this new identity, and we can see what's working and what's not. And if we find in our new life that we're not overly happy with the way that whatever is working, we have enough self-awareness still at this point in this neutral zone and enough fluidity in our identity and our daily patterns to be able to change the way that we're approaching things. So you can try something new and have a plan B if that might not work. Honestly, going ahead and figuring out what your what ifs and your plan Bs are as you're getting into your new grooves will help you feel some sense of control over what's happening if that new groove you're trying out doesn't work. So let's say you've moved to your new city, you're looking to meet a group of like-minded friends, and at your previous home, you had a lot of friends through your dance school. If you try out one dance school in your new city and it just doesn't seem to click for you there, it's easier to keep looking when you've already set it in your head that you're going to dance for these reasons, X, Y, Z. And if that school doesn't fit what you want, you can go somewhere else without it really affecting your sense of self, your self-identity, and without having to basically break apart new patterns and try to create new patterns. You haven't really forged all those patterns together yet. So you can always have some plan Bs, consciously figuring out how you want to create your patterns so that you know if the pattern is forming the way you want. Now, as you're going through this process, especially with looking at building these patterns and recognizing milestones, you can actually put a check-in with yourself on your calendar as you're dealing with your changes. This is something that I have started doing since I left my corporate job and I've started up my own business and I'm moved and all of these other changes we've had going on. I set up a monthly reminder on my calendar, and all it asks me to do is to check in with my new patterns. How are they going? This can really help to keep you focused on what it is you're trying to accomplish. So put some milestones on your calendar to say, by this time, I want to have gone out and met some new people, or by this time, I want to have found a new professional association I can join, or I want to find a new gym that I can join, or a new dance school that I can join, so that you don't fall into what I call accidental living, where you end up being in your life for years without really consciously living it. So put these on your calendar, even if it's just that little smiley face reminder that says, hey, how you doing? How's everything going? If you're a journaler or you have like a written planner book, at the beginning of every month, you can jot down a quick note or a couple of quick bullet points of ways that you're moving forward toward that new identity of yours, ways that you're fully moving into your new beginning to kind of keep it front of mind. Because we do often get caught up once we've gotten into this neutral zone and we're starting to edge toward the new beginning phase, where we're basically trying to get into our new normal so quickly that we don't give ourselves the flexibility to unpattern that new reality and piece it back together in a different way if we aren't 100% happy with the way that it's going. So the last phase we're going to talk about today is the new beginning phase. As you can guess from the name, it is not the end, it is the start of the new. It's stepping into that next room. It's opening up into this wider space, this different space that you've maybe never been in before, but it's just the first step into that room. So you have lots of opportunities inside that new space to figure out where you want to go. When you hit this phase, you will start to feel that you're getting into your groove. Your energy will come back. You'll start getting excited about new ideas, new opportunities, and you can really get some momentum going. Your new feels way less daunting than it did before, and you're ready to jump in and start going with it. All right, so let's take this one for a final spin. Now that we've talked about the 3 phases in Dr. Bridges' Managing Transitions book, the 3 main phases of change: ending, losing, letting go, the neutral zone, and new beginnings. We've talked about the fact that we go through a lot of different emotions when we're dealing with transitions from point A to point B. And that middle phase is where we deal with a lot of breaking things down and putting them back together. And we talked about the fact that feeling a sense of control can help us through these transitional phases. So if you're dealing with a change right now, here's some things to think about. 1, what are you letting go? What are you giving up? What is going away in whatever this change is that you're dealing with? Number 2, what are you gaining in the change? Number 3, what is your new identity? What do you want it to be? And 4, what is one thing you can control and what are you going to do about it? So, final thought. There's a song that I love, and I am completely dating myself a little bit here by talking about this song. It's a song by a band called REO Speedwagon. The song is called Roll with the Changes. If you're not familiar with this song, you should do a quick internet search and listen to this song because it's one of my favorites that talks about change. Because sometimes we hold on to things in our current situation that we don't even like that much, but we hold on to them because they're comfortable and they feel safe. So this quote is in the song, Roll with the Changes. If you're tired of the same old story, turn some pages. Now that's what this whole podcast episode has been about. Turning over new pages. We have to let go of the one page to be able to turn on to the next page and read it. It can be a little scary, but it can also be awesome, and we will never know how the plot changes until we do. There's a lot more to change management than we've been able to discuss in this short time here, but hopefully this has been helpful for you and whetted your appetite to maybe dig in a little bit more and think about the way that you process changes yourself. So good luck with your changes. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me by email or on social media. Subscribe to this podcast, share it with your friends if you have anybody that you think would benefit from hearing this, and take care. Well, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to this podcast and share the magic with your dance friends. If you want more, you can sign up for our mailing list at bellydancealchemy.org, or you can email me your suggestions and feedback. I would love to hear from you at bellydancealchemypodcast@gmail.com. Bye.